Healthy ecosystems sound organized. Stressed systems that are noisy sound chaotic and incoherent. The sounds kind of don't match. But when you have a healthy habitat, it's like a musical score.
My name is Matt Clark, and I'm the founder of United Visual Artists. And we are a collective based in London, and we are responsible for the visual representation of Bernie's work for the Great Animal Orchestra. We have a history of collaborating with people outside of our practice. We primarily create our own self-initiated work, but occasionally we collaborate with people who we find really interesting and who we resonate with, and Bernie's a good example of that.
The Great Animal Orchestra is a composite of 7 different habitats from around the world, marine and terrestrial. And it's comprised of two components. The first is the audio component, which is very important. We've made very few attempts to try to express things through sound. But now, because we have the ability to be able to portray these things with sound, I've created these 7 different pieces that express the life that's present in these given habitats through the ways that animals vocalize. Well, as I've listened to this material over a period of time, it's become clear to me that these are narratives, these are stories, these are the original stories that are told about the living planet. And I haven't changed my mind about that in any way. They become more resonant with me every time I hear them. One of the problems I've had with my work is finding a way to express that visually and connecting the audio to the visual components. Most of my work so far, until I met Matt and the folks at UVA, was comprised of small format pieces. We had the ability to transform these sounds into large format pieces so that they could be expressed in a more theatrical environment. One of the issues in our culture has been that sound has always been used to support image, like in film, for instance. Sound is the last thing that's ever done in a film. However, in this particular instance, we've kind of flipped that on its head, and the visuals are now supporting the soundscape, but they work absolutely in parallel and hand in hand. If you're looking for a reason to get rid of some stress, put some of these sounds on and listen to them. They're really soothing.
It uses code which analyzes sound in real time. So it's not a video. You know, if there wasn't sound playing through the system that we designed, you wouldn't see anything in here. There would be nothing. So it has this kind of live element to it. And on the left-hand side of the exhibition, you see the information being processed live with these lines. And then on the right-hand side is the historical data of that information being processed. And that's really what Bernie analyzes to understand the biophonies and the natural habitats. But for me, what's super interesting as you watch it scroll by, it sort of suggests a kind of musical score in a way. And so you have this very kind of live digital representation of the sound, but it also kind of conjures up all sorts of kind of thoughts about the origins of music in itself. And before this project, I had no idea of all of these things, and it's just, I think that's what captivates people really, is to really see these patterns. The creative problem with this kind of work is how to create something that has integrity as a kind of an informative piece of work, something that, you know, allows the space to create discourse about the subject that it's referring to, but also to inspire. because I think over the years there's been a certain amount of apathy in relation to environmental issues. Maybe that's changed in the very recent years. So really the challenge is, how can we inspire people about the subject, but also inform? And I think with these kinds of works, that's always the challenge, really, to find that balance.
Well, my main desire is that visitors come away with this, with a sense of wonder about living organisms and the living world around us. I mean, the voice of the natural world gives us a sense of place. It also tells us, if we're listening carefully, it also tells us how healthy a habitat is and our relationship to those sounds. We have a profound effect on every aspect of the natural world, and the consequence of our actions and our behavior is shown through these expressions. For instance, when we have a cold, it shows in our voice. If we're sick, it shows in our voice. It's the same thing with a natural habitat. In the natural world, when a habitat is under stress, the first place it shows is in its voice. We won't see it in an image that's created of that particular habitat, not a real image of it anyway. But in the soundscape, we hear that, and in the image of the soundscape, the spectrogram, we see it, because it's all there. All that information is there. The low-frequency sounds are at the bottom of the score and the bottom line with the basses. The high frequencies are in the higher range, and each of these species has its own particular, finds its own particular bandwidth within a healthy habitat. And the creatures learn to stay out of each other's way. But in a habitat that's stressed, where you're doing selective logging or clear cutting, something like that, it completely changes the ways in which the animals express themselves, and they're looking for acoustic territory. They're trying to find acoustic territory where they use their energy in efficient ways. So when they're trying to stay out of each other's way, they're fussing around trying to find that clear channel in which to vocalize. But when you see or hear a habitat like the ones that we have here, all of these habitats, whether they're tropical or Arctic or subarctic or marine, all of these habitats show how these animals find these acoustic territories in which to vocalize. Either it's frequency related or it's time related. They find times to sing when other animals aren't in that channel. It's really amazing, and it's a very different model than what we've been doing in these archives and collections over a long period of time. There are huge collections of individual sounds. But when you take a creature, an animal's voice out of context, you lose all that valuable information of its relationship to all the other animals that are in that habitat. And this is the first formal expression of how that all works together and how we're all part of that same system.